The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Techtown Detroit, Detroit's entrepreneurship hub. Techtown Detroit is a business incubator and accelerator, helping tech startups and local businesses launch and grow. Techtown supports businesses with co-working, office, meeting, and event space. They also connect entrepreneurs to resources and learning and networking events in Detroit. Techtown Detroit, Detroit's entrepreneurship hub. Hey everybody, this is the week that was on Deadline Detroit. Happy Friday. Glad to have you with us today. I am Craig Fahle. Very happy to be here. I am joined, of course, by my regular co-hosts, Nancy Derringer and Alan Lengel from Deadline Detroit. We appreciate them being here.
Hello.
Special guest today, Todd Perkins of the Todd Perkins Law Group, the Perkins Law Group here in Detroit. Also, congratulations on the new restaurant that just opened up. There's a little story about it on Deadline Detroit right now.
Well, I appreciate
Shrimp
that.
Shack, it's, what's the name of it?
It's Lynette's.
Lynette's, that's right, Lynette's, and it's right there in Highland Park. And congratulations on doing that. And I love the fact you got the kids working there, which is very cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And they seem to be they're having a great time.
My daughter was there when I was there. She seemed to be enjoying it.
Even though it was Saturday, my son was in school, so blame that on U of D. Yeah. But they're there on the weekends as much as activities will allow them. I want them to do the school first, and we'll get to the work.
Well, that's not a bad way to do it. Right. Work ethic.
Yeah.
Actual ethic.
Yeah.
Ethics.
Oh, my goodness.
As Tony Soprano said,
way to segue.
I may not have ethics, but I got rules.
Well, our president maybe doesn't seem to really have either.
No.
Certainly boundaries are an issue. We just for the third time in U.S. history, we now have a president facing actual impeachment. Of course, Richard Nixon didn't get that far, was smart enough to resign before it got there because he knew he was going to lose in the Senate.
Yep.
He did the right thing.
Right.
He did the right thing. Absolutely. Now, of course, just the Judiciary Committee just did this morning. They passed down those 2 articles of impeachment. They now go to the full House, which will likely happen early next week.
Right.
Well, as they said, expeditiously, I think is the word that Jerry Nadler used this morning in his statement.
Which is a big word for some people these days, but it basically means soon.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
But yesterday, I did my best to watch as much of the hearings as I could. And I believe we had, 13, 14 hours or something like that yesterday, starting at 9 and ending at about 10:30 at night. My math's not that good. That would be 13 and a half hours. That was some of the weirdest television I've seen in a long time. Listening to the arguments going back and forth. You look at the defense of President Trump and how it's morphed over the course of the last several months to the thing, well, this never happened. There was no quid pro quo. To now the point where like, yeah, there is. So what? And that's basically it. Mitch McConnell signaled that there might not even be a trial in the Senate. They may just vote to dismiss the charges, which is something they would be able to do, even though Donald Trump wants a more full-throated defense and wants to drag a bunch of witnesses, people like Hunter Biden and stuff like that, in front of this group.
Yeah,
it's a partisan impeachment. It is, but the Republicans they
was
just
the last
don't
one
care.
Not a partisan impeachment? I
Absolutely,
thought it was.
Yeah,
they're all
it
partisan impeachments, but I think the most troubling thing is it'd be okay to debate whether it's impeachable or not if they could at least come to an agreement that something was not right, that there was some improprieties involved in here, and then you get to the point and say, is this impeachable? Should he be impeached? I mean, the problem is, they won't acknowledge that, and the only way, I think the Democrats would have been ashamed, and it would have been a shame had they not proceeded, even though the outcome is known, but they needed to lay down a marker.
It's their job.
I truly believe that they're just doing this almost what is sort of unsavory, is that a lot of these congressmen or congresspeople are lawyers, and they're treating it like a legal case. And they're locked in on a defense, and it's almost like if you're in a settlement, if I want to give you $10,000 and the next person wants $1 million, they're going to lock in on their position so they don't come to, the one side doesn't get $600,000 and then the other side doesn't settle for $20,000. So they're locked in on these positions, but they're also in the court of public opinion. And as elected officials, they have to recognize this. And I agree with Alan. We and I say Democrats because I am a Democrat, but I've not always voted democratically, and I've been disappointed with the Democrats over the years because they haven't taken stands. And I think that this is something we needed to do as a nation to say, we know what's going to happen. but we say this is bad behavior. You don't do it again. Because if we're supposed to be the United States of America, we're supposed to be telling everyone else in the world how to conduct themselves, how to live, how, telling China you're burning too much, making too much pollution, all these other things. Then, we've got to handle and tidy up our business too.
Right.
So I think this is what this is about. I know Pelosi at one time didn't want it, but her hand was really turned when he went into Ukraine. I mean, they wanted to impeach him a long time ago on other stuff,
right?
And we've forgotten about that.
Yeah,
but they didn't bring any of that stuff.
No,
because
they didn't.
It would have been a little bit more difficult. This one was just so blatant.
No,
and the fact
was.
that they were actually walking around bragging about how they did this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, Rudy Giuliani going on television saying, "You bet I meddled in the Ukraine. You bet I did this."
I
and
did this
President
for my
Trump
client. Yeah, right.
said it as well. I don't think they had a choice, and that's a good point you make there, Todd, because I don't think the Democrats had a choice this time around. What is the one thing they are constantly criticized about as Democrats from within their own ranks?
Not being strong.
They're wusses.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
don't. The Republicans have shown that they will do whatever they need to do to make the ends justify the means.
Right.
They will do whatever they need to do.
Let me take you back a couple of years.
Democrats have always wussed away from that stuff.
Remember when Bush and who was the senator, Kerry, were running against each other? I think they were, the economy was still doing all right. This is 2004. What did they say? They felt Kerry was weak. And that was the reason why I believe he did, because it was a close election.
Of course,
but
there was also a propaganda campaign launched
the
against
Swift
him.
Voters for Truth.
Right, the
Right.
Swift Voters for Truth was just absolute BS,
I
and it was
understood,
like, remember those
Yeah, his
old
purple hearts weren't real purple hearts.
remember those old white ladies at the convention with the Band-Aid on their cheek with the little purple heart drawn on it,
Right.
And it's just, I mean, what the Republicans have shown is not only are they willing to bend the rules so that the ends will justify the means, they are willing to go lower than I think an awful lot of people are comfortable with.
win at any cost.
And win at any cost,
Yes.
by any means necessary.
Yes.
And I don't know, I mean, I don't want to say Democrats are better people, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know that I want to walk around with a Purple Heart Band-Aid on my cheek. I'm just not that kind of person.
The Republicans, I mean, they have found a vehicle in Donald Trump to carry out their agenda. They
The blunt instrument.
privately do not like Donald Trump. I mean, he's not their kind of guy. He's not really a Republican, but he is a vehicle for them to fill up the courts, to carry out an agenda here that they haven't been able to carry out, and they're so fearful of losing that at any cost, and
That they'll do anything.
they'll do anything.
But following this guy, because look, he's going to be acquitted in the Senate. We know this. They're not going to. I mean, Mitch McConnell has already said. He said just yesterday on Fox News that there is no way that this president will ever be found guilty. The Senate is supposed to be the chamber where this trial has happened. The White House counsel is actively working with Mitch McConnell to craft the defense. Something seems a little off about that. So when they talk about rules of law and the process and the procedure and saying that this is not a true legal process, well, this has been the investigation phase, right?
I
When you
would
bring
move
the
to
charges.
change venue. I would take it away from the
How do you
Senate.
do it? How do you
And
do
go
that?
to some other branch of government.
Let's go to France.
Go to. I would want to move to. Let's go to somewhere else, and because look, there's no. I appreciate the transparency that they're telling you that they're going to cheat. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate that. But at the same time, where's the fairness to the American people to let you know that the White House counsel is working directly with them to craft, like you said, to craft a defense? But here's what I also say. And here's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Look at this. And this shows some of the things that Trump really brings out the ugly part in America, because I always believe one of the things that's going to be the death knell of America is that we don't deal with race honestly, and we haven't come to grips with that. I know that the professionals I deal with, the people in my circle, we honestly talk about those things. Where would Obama be if he had done what Trump has done?
You can't even.
He wouldn't have gotten out the first year.
Lock him up.
Yeah.
Lock him up. They were talking about locking him up. Anyway, you had a congressman on while he was sitting about to make his State of the Union speech.
You lie.
You're a liar, or you lie.
Right.
Now that kind of behavior, it just, and a lot of what he's doing is for the, he's rallying up that base.
Yeah.
Like he says, let's not forget what he said. he is an honest he is an honest politician because he's done everything he said he was going to do. I was going to lie, steal, and cheat, and I could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and I wouldn't lose a vote.
That's next. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting.
Avenue.
I mean, you talk about. I mean, the guy he's a bigot. I mean, he's a panderer. He panders to every group. He panders to the neo-Nazis. He panders to the Jews.
The black pastors who can get something out of him.
Paul Krugman was writing about how Donald Trump is bad for the Jews, and he talks about him speaking before a group of Jewish people, and he says,
that was bad.
He says something like, "You guys are bad people.
You're killers.
You're
killers."
Right. He says to it was the Israeli-American council, in which he asserted that many in his audience were not nice people at all, but that you have to vote for me because Democrats would raise their taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you Jews and your money, you don't care how much you hate me, you love your money more.
Yeah, exactly.
You love your money more than you hate me, so vote for me. I mean, how absurd have we gotten in this country where blatant bigotry from a president is embraced and people don't care. His supporters do not care.
But Alan, his baby favorite daughter Ivanka is an Orthodox Jew now. He can't possibly be anti-Semitic.
You know what? I think we can find a white man who's married to a black woman who's still a racist.
Well, this is the
great analogy. That is a good analogy.
This is the Kid Rock excuse. He has a biracial son.
Right.
He can't possibly be racist.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so bad actors of the week, though. I mean, watching the Judiciary Committee, my new favorite congressperson might be Matt Gaetz out of Florida.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
So this is a guy who's got a DUI on his record, and he calls out Hunter Biden for having substance abuse issues
just
yesterday.
Call him out. He read long passages from this New Yorker story about the utter degradation that Hunter Biden was embroiled in as a drug addict.
Yes. Well, that's exactly.
I mean, it wasn't
though.
like he said, "Hey, he's a drug addict."
But
he like went into a lot of detail.
You know, but watching that, I'm just like, oh, he went there, and you knew he was going to at some point. They were just waiting, like, this is a bad guy, and they're trying to make sure that the Bidens are part of this conversation, no matter what happens, to keep that on people's minds.
Right.
At some point, Hunter Biden, I mean, do you just keep your mouth shut, sit down, do nothing, or do you get up and just say, you know what, I've been listening to this crap for the last couple of months. Here's exactly what I did. Here's why I did it. Did they pay me too much money? Yeah. Should I have taken that job? Probably not. But at the same time, every one of these idiots up here would have leapt at that opportunity to get the kind of paycheck I'm getting right now, because that's exactly why they're in Congress, is to get the opportunity to get that kind of fat check when they leave. That's exactly what most of them are there for. K Street's waiting.
I think there's something to that. I think that would not be a terrible strategy for him. But he's working with his father. So
well, I work with my lawyer first, because you've got this kind of bandwagon that can be rallied up to, they'll try to spin that and get him arrested on something when a guy like Giuliani is running around here wholesale committing crimes. I mean, crimes against the nation. I mean, they've been doing it since the beginning and prior to. But, one person, a lawyer, you guys know Juan Mateo, we were talking several months ago, because I had seen the Manchurian Candidate. He says, what are you talking about, the Manchurian Candidate? We got him living in the White House. You know what I'm saying? But
he's the Russian candidate.
Yeah, but at least they tried to keep it a secet in the movie.
No, it's not even. They're just laughing at us. And, but the thing is, these guys, there's a guy, I can't remember his name. He was a district court judge, and he's now a congressman, and he's on the judiciary. He was trying to, in his own eloquence, break down why these charges should not come up. But I can't remember, but he's from Pennsylvania. And, he makes a case from a just purely legal perspective, saying you don't have this information or probable cause, is what we say in law in criminal charges. There's not enough probable cause to move this to the next level. And he's saying why that didn't happen. And he's just, it's so, probable causes, once it's said, even if there's a question of fact, meaning that if I say something happened and someone else says something different, well, that's going to be left up to a trial to determine. There's still probable cause by the information I've presented. That's the reason why Trump didn't present any information.
Right.
It was a smart move for him not to. Because why not save it for the trial? Why give the other side an advance notice of how I'm going to defend these attacks? That's smart, because you're going to get impeached. Just like he knows he's going to win once he goes to trial, because they've already told him.
Right.
But
You know what I find interesting with Rudy
This is why I bring
Giuliani.
lawyers on the show.
Rudy Giuliani is always like, hey, you know, I don't charge the president or whatever, but he goes overseas, Ukraine and elsewhere, and says, hey, guess who my best client is? President Trump.
He
and
takes an
that's
empty
going to cost
suitcase
you
with
$3,
him.
$4 million to retain me, because and the same thing, you know, I saw somebody on Facebook, a MAGA hatter, who had something saying Trump does not take any, he doesn't take a salary, so, you know, blah, blah, blah. But Trump flies down the Secret Service, probably 30 agents to Mar-a-Lago, and he flies down his staff. So every weekend, he probably makes what he would make in a year from that salary.
You know what? It doesn't
housing
even,
everybody.
It doesn't
at
even
Mar-a-Lago.
matter. I mean, yeah, he doesn't take a salary. Woo, big deal. It's like, has he released his tax return so we could verify that?
No.
You know, I mean, how many times has this guy lied about some charitable contribution that he claimed to make that turned out to be absolute BS?
Right.
So it's like, hey, okay, we'll believe you released your tax.
Well, no, okay, the lying thing, right? This is a point I was making with a friend of mine the other day, and I said, look, this is a guy who's been documented to have lied 13,000 times since he took office. 13,000 lies.
This is
And I said,
grandpa's
and now
dementia.
He's
Come
asking you
on.
to believe that this is the one time he's not lying.
yeah.
And I just said, at some point, you know, when somebody shows you who they are, believe it.
them.
I mean, that's basically it. And you know, he is that guy.
But
And are
maybe
you
he's
telling
going to
me-
change the definition of lying. So then he's really not lying. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? That's what he wants
I
to do. Is
misspoke.
just I misspoke. You know, or what? Or no,
13,000 times.
Yeah, 13,000 times. That's just normal for him. He's just, I'm not lying. I'm just talking. I'm being me.
Are you telling me Ivanka has not created 14 million jobs? Because I'm, you know, I was really hoping to kind of
14 million jobs.
Yeah, that was one of the things he claimed that
In
she
China,
had, she had
perhaps.
created 14
In China with her
million jobs.
investments.
And it was the 14 million figure came from something like, you know, 14 million opportunities to take a class or something like that, but it wasn't.
Well, okay, of all the things that we know bothered
hurts.
Donald Trump, though, right? I mean, obviously the impeachment thing has been on his mind. I think he tweeted 100 times yesterday about this. I'm not kidding. I think
Really?
it was
Okay.
112 tweets or something like that.
Okay.
But the one that probably is bothering him the most, the one thing that's going on right now is the fact that he was not named Times Person of the Year.
Oh my God!
Because
that is so delicious.
he has actively lobbied for this. He had a meeting with the editorial board at Time last year, and he spent the whole time talking about how he should be Times Person of the Year because he's got the fake
He
Time
wants a
covers
real
that he's
cover.
made.
He wants the real
Well,
cover.
I didn't know why that story became a story. I didn't realize that.
Well,
Does anybody
yeah.
still read Time magazine? Go
Well, they
ahead.
don't, but still, I mean, but it looks great framed in your
Yeah,
office, right?
exactly, yeah.
So, but the great thing is, and I can only imagine the editorial board meeting at Time when they were trying to figure this out, and they decided to give it to Greta Thunberg, who, of course, is the 16-year-old climate activist from Sweden, who made a lot of headlines this year that Trump has criticized before.
Oh, he hates her.
He hates her. 16-year-old girl.
Yeah, he hates her.
And so she is the person of the year. And like I said, I can only imagine at Time Magazine, they're like, what could we do that would tick him off the most? Who could we possibly pick to be man
but
of the
you
year?
see how small
Other
a
than
person
maybe
he has
Hunter
to
Biden.
be
Yeah.
to
To take off after a
He's a junior
16-year-old
high
girl.
kid.
Right.
But not only that, that's more important than people being well in their country. People having
Oh, yeah.
real jobs.
He's
you
a
know,
tiny
and
tiny man with an incredibly fragile
And a
ego.
large waistline.
And if I am not mistaken, and a very large waistline, yes. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw this like in part of the information fire hose that goes past my head all day long, and I didn't verify it, but I'm pretty sure. Remember the Rocky cover or the Rocky?
Yes, yes,
photograph?
yes.
I believe there is a new one now of him with his head photoshopped onto the Greta Thunberg photo, and it says something like "Promises made, promises kept." No, one of you guys can check it. While
Oh,
we
well, yeah,
talk.
I will
Then he
look.
put on his Twitter, and it's like
Oh.
that is. I mean, I was like, "Oh, come on," but you know, so we'll see.
Well, he did decide to attack her.
Yeah, he did.
By
A
the way,
little girl.
She's got Asperger's syndrome.
That doesn't even matter. It's just so disgusting. But
Well,
anyway.
just the fact is, I mean, I just the concept. It's like going after a kid. You know, you see this kind of thing at like a little league game where some opposing parent, like hits the home run off your kid's pitcher and he goes out there and threatens him or something like that. You know,
But this is the leader of the free world. You know,
Yeah.
so no one is safe
And you
in
were-
his world. And not even a 16-year-old
And where's
young lady.
Melania?
And you were her
anti-bully
the sex
campaign.
worker in chief. You were talking
I
about
love this show. You can't make this
you were
up.
talking about how we have to be an example for the world. All that's gone. I mean,
is.
it's absolutely gone. That's why they're laughing about Trump behind his back at the NATO summit.
They had
It's
that
like-
SNL piece a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was absolutely hilarious.
Right.
you
I mean,
know.
we've squandered all that in 3 years. It's gone.
Well,
So-
I had mentioned one time, and I was talking to Alan. There was a story. It was about a year after he was elected. Before he was elected, as far as branding, which is very important in the world and very important in marketing, the United States was the #1 brand in the world.
Right.
And within a year after him being elected, I think we were 6. I could bet dollars to donuts we're way down that now. You know,
wouldn't
it's
Trump
just-
steaks
me.
might be
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Trump vodka.
Yeah.
Oh man!
Oh, yeah.
All
The
right,
hotels
so
and everything.
Right,
Oh my
right,
God.
let's take a look at a couple of other things that are going on around here. Let's talk Brexit for just a little bit. Boris Johnson,
my gosh.
huge win last night
Enormous.
for their party. The Labour Party in shambles in Great Britain. Apparently, people actually want Brexit. So it
Well,
looks like that's going to happen by January 31st.
The working classes want Brexit.
Absolutely,
I mean,
they do. But the Scots may have an independence vote out of this whole thing.
That could be really interesting.
Yeah.
An independent Scotland. Wow.
Wow.
Hell,
Yeah.
you know,
About time.
Yeah, it's like Sean Connery for president
Oh,
of
yeah.
Scotland.
Wow.
You know.
President Emeritus.
Yeah.
But I'm
Okay.
just wondering, do you see any lessons in that for us?
Yes.
And I mean, I worry a little bit that this, because everything was just paralyzed over there because of this Brexit issue and nobody being able to figure out how to get it done. Now
Yeah.
they're saying, just move us along here.
Every
we see
election.
the same thing next year in this country
Yeah.
for Trump. And
Every
the Democrats
election-
get punished for.
It's entirely possible,
Yeah.
which is why I think
Still
the
gotta do it.
conversation among the Democratic candidates has to change from it can't be Trump. It just can't be Trump because that's a losing strategy. It has to be about healthcare and economic development and real jobs, not just Starbucks jobs. Nothing wrong with Starbucks. There's a place for that. But I mean jobs that actually pay a living wage and that people can
And healthcare.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, we can't. Do you know why the birth rate is falling? It's because people can't. I mean,
People can't afford
imagine
it.
being a 25-year-old woman with or without a college degree. If you have a college degree, you're probably doing some gig work.
You're
If
also
you
paying
don't,
student loans.
paying
Yeah.
student loans. If you don't have a college degree, you're probably doing, being a cashier somewhere. Can you imagine having a child in that? I mean, I waited until I had, a husband and life or health insurance and everything else and a decent job that gave me leave that I could come back to. I mean, nobody has that, or far fewer people have that anymore.
Well, federal workers apparently have family leave now for a little while, but
Yeah,
that's something
well,
that the Republicans
right.
are not pleased about.
Well, and if you work for a major corporation, you probably have it. But an awful lot of people, they don't work for major corporations, although they might have a series of 1099 gigs out of them. But anyway, go ahead.
But here, I worry. Here's my worry: is we as Americans, we're so conscientious about money and things of that because we're a capitalist environment.
Right.
If the economy is doing well, it's almost like the same thing with Bush.
Right.
The economy was doing okay in 2004, where I thought Kerry far outshined Bush.
Yeah.
Everybody accepted Bush as being not the sharpest knife in the in
Well,
the
and he
trade.
got us into a disastrous war that we're
Right.
still in.
But at the time, the economy was okay.
Right.
So we will take the very temporal thing or the very surface things, topical things like the economy, which is important.
Yeah.
But we're not looking at the long-term effects because you talk to some people on Wall Street. They feel like with all the market conditions, and you look at the trends. As they look at it, it's almost like analogizing that to having snow in July.
Right.
They can't figure out which way is up or which way is down. And eventually, in all markets throughout the entire history of the world, they will correct themselves.
Right.
And typically the correction is painful more so than positive.
The other way.
than
Yeah,
the other
exactly.
way. It
Right.
just that inertia once it starts. Look what we had, and we don't have the wherewithal to do what we did back in 2008 now and 2009, and just do what the Obama administration did in rewriting the economy, except unless the rest of the world buys onto it.
Right.
You know,
And they're
so
not going to.
No,
Well-
they won't.
No.
I should remind folks, this is the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm Craig Fahle. Nancy Derringer is here. Todd Perkins is here. And, of course, Alan Langel is here.
Go ahead, Alan. Quick pitch for our new membership drive.
Very good. Tell them what it's about.
$3. We're asking people to support independent local journalism, and for that, it's $3 a month. Some people are giving a little bit more. For that, there's also going to be monthly drawings. In January, we have 2 sets of courtside seats to the Pistons.
Sweet.
That
is pretty awesome,
passes.
even if the Pistons suck. But
beats a tote bag.
You
people.
never know what happens.
the Pistons are getting better. They are getting better. Derrick Rose is a nice plus. And we also have 4 restaurants for this month. We have London Chop House, we have Wright & Company, we have American Coney Island, and we have Babbo Detroit.
There you go.
You're entered to win if you donate
we have
anything.
5 Starbucks cards for $10.
Hey,
Do you have
I
auto
spend
pay
a
on
lot.
that? You know, because Alan just told me about that, and I definitely.
It's like joining public radio. You sign, you
Yeah,
give me
yeah.
a credit
Okay,
card,
okay,
and you
and
get
then
billed
it's
every month.
ring or
You're
one
sustaining
Okay.
membership.
One time. So,
Sustaining
anyways,
membership,
we
right.
do encourage people to support us.
We're free.
We feel
but-
Exactly.
But
free. We're
but we
offering a
cost
service,
money.
but I think the trend in the businesses now is that people are starting to charge for their product, which is not unreasonable considering the product
No,
costs
it's
money to
extremely
produce.
And the thing is, but also you look at what's going on. We just had news of departures from the Free Press the other day, so that there
Right.
wouldn't have to be involuntary layoffs.
Good, and
I mean, look,
for
local journalism is
very
getting
seasoned
whacked.
people.
Yeah.
And for organizations like ours and some of the others that are out there doing this kind of work, it is critically important. And getting people to actually recognize that this stuff is not free.
Right.
It does cost us money to do these jobs, and we hopefully you appreciate the work that we do, and you'll support it. And that's it.
And we have a banner ad. We have an article, and we also have a banner ad across the top. If you click on that, it'll take you right to the page.
And now we're going to talk about some of the hard-hitting stories that we've got to talk about today because you said all markets, and it made me think of Hallmark. Now, if anybody has ever watched the Hallmark Channel, you know that this time of year is nothing but solid Christmas movies.
Right.
And it's always the same plot, basically. City girl comes back to small town to run a B&B or take over her ailing mother's veterinary practice or something.
She has to come back for a different reason, but go ahead.
Well, it's always for something.
Yeah, it's always for something.
And then, of course, runs into the ruggedly handsome, outdoorsy type who's living there and living the small town life, and she's literally charmed the pants off the woman, and they end up happily in love and happily ever after. Well, the Hallmark Channel, of course,
which also needs to make some money.
Caters to women, mostly.
Yeah.
Had an ad-on for this company called Zola, and Zola sells basically online wedding planning services.
Right.
They had a commercial that dared show 2 women getting married and kiss. Now, the problem with this is there's a group called the Million Moms. They are an offshoot of the American Family Association, which our friend Gary Glenn is the head of in Michigan here.
Yep.
They are really upset. They're calling for a boycott of the Hallmark Channel. And here's what's great. I'm going to read some quotes from their letter.
Right.
You are one of the few channels we thought we would not have to deal with this issue. Please remove this and any other gay, lesbian, bisexual, or anything else it is called from your channels. We love you, but we won't keep watching with this type of ads.
The Shonda.
And so, this is going on, and they basically said parents need to know that they could now come face-to-face with the LGBT agenda when they sit down to watch the Hallmark Channel.
Wow.
And so,
The LGBT
and basically,
agenda.
well, and Hallmark's in trouble because they have what, I think 42 different Christmas movies that are newly produced for this year, something like 25 to 40 or something like that.
And they recycle the ones from last year.
Yeah,
Sure.
but they're talking about, hey, maybe we should actually have a gay couple in one of these. They opened that and said, hey, we're thinking about it.
Right.
Ooh, can't have that apparently. But I'm thinking to myself, what does it mean to have the coming face to face with the LGBT agenda? What is that? What is that?
What is?
I don't
well,
know.
it
Well,
means-
it's the intolerance that we have in this country now.
But I
it's-
can't even be
it's-
presented with this reality.
If
I mean,
it
Right.
means
Todd
if it
is-
means better decoration in your better interior decoration and
gourmet
cooking, I'm all for it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just, it's
is
the same
intolerant.
thing that just comes. This is the reason why Trump is our president. Because he espouses that agenda. So
Right. Yeah.
I just, it's a shame that they call it the agenda.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They dehumanize these people. I say these people, but I don't mean to say it either. But by calling it an agenda, these are people's lives that are very real people who we know and love.
Right.
And, we can't cast them aside as just an agenda. It's
50 years ago, it was mixed race couples getting married.
Yeah.
They probably would have been.
Well,
What about on Mr. Rogers when he was sitting and put his feet in the water? There was part of that story where he had a black officer from the military come on a show, and I think they were washing their feet together. I mean, they were in an uproar. What about the dancing?
Oh my God!
What about the dancing that they would have? Like Sidney Poitier was
Right.
broke barriers when he slapped the guy in the heat of the
In
night.
the heat of the night,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
It's so it's I hope that it's just something that we just have to get through, and 50 years from now, there'll be something
we
else.
look back with shame like we have in history. I mean, look, our talk about race. I mean, one of the most shameful things in our, in our country, which has gone on forever. I mean, slavery, which is you look back and you think slavery was never a good idea.
No.
Slavery was never
Bad
okay.
idea in ancient Egypt.
Well, a lot
was never okay.
a lot of people that Fox News likes to call, liberals, are basically call themselves progressives, right? Yeah. And what is the root of the word progressive? Progress, and we understand that times change and that as we move forward, we may need to correct our attitudes about certain things. Right. And that's always been kind of the genius of American life.
It's called evolving.
It's evolving.
It's evolving.
Oh, evolution!
We evolve as human beings. When we're younger, we see everything in black and white. When we get older, we see gray matter. We understand that there's more nuances to life. It's interesting. We're talking about Trump is that he's enabled people to say, or he's encouraged people to say, oh my God, he thinks just like I do. We love this. Here's if we have a moment, there's a friend on Facebook who's a good friend who's a retired FBI agent, and he posts today, so it looks like the left's poison has ruined yet another great American institution, and the FISA court will now join the others that have been irreparably damaged by their jaundiced touch. It will now join the movie industry, entertainment, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Boy Scouts, impeachment process, FBI, football, legal immigration,
Hollywood.
Race relations, law enforcement, dating, sex. And then he's, I guess, because the song Baby It's Cold Outside, and he says now they've even ruined that with political correctness.
Well, that is a date rape song, basically.
Well, now stop. We're gonna have a Baby It's Cold Outside discussion
Come
in
on.
another week
Come
I need to
it's
gather my
funny.
notes on that
That's
one.
the whole notion
I know
of
it
that
is
thing.
funny,
But it
but
says
joke.
their cancerous demands are ruining our society.
Cancerous
and that
demands.
That's a
I was under the
prevailing thought.
I thought
you know?
I
the
don't understand what he's
FBI.
saying, though. I'm missing
Yeah.
his point.
He's basically
Liberals are
saying
ruining the world.
liberals and
okay,
political correctness, and
right.
and then he mentioned earlier they're even ruined California.
Oh wow.
Well, California's
I
been
thought the
ruined for a long
FBI
time.
was
Right.
opposed. I thought the FBI was rotten to the core and opposed to Trump. Is this guy? Is this like an outlier?
No, there's a lot of there's a lot of
Of
conservative.
course there are.
there's-
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's also a joke. I
Right,
mean,
right.
he's the one who's
Well,
like.
they came out with. They found that there were during the investigation there were FBI agents who were very pro-Trump.
Yeah, well,
Of course there were.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's
that,
okay.
They're all
those are just the
passing-
smart ones. Those are just the
passing
smart
around
ones.
their-
Those guys are not part of the deep state. All the other ones are part of the deep state.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, if this is the deep state, can we call you the shallow state? Does that work? I kind of like that.
like
But
that.
say, real quick to get back to that, any shock at all? You've covered federal law enforcement for a long time. You're an attorney. Any shock at all that maybe some people took some shortcuts on some FISA applications?
You know what? It's I guess it's a little surprising considering what was at stake there, but it happens. You know what? There are so many. Believe me, there's and Todd, I'm sure, has seen this in doing trials in law enforcement. Law enforcement sometimes takes shortcuts, and some are zealots who believe that the ends justifies the means. And so we do see, look, it's like any other profession. Are there some bad reporters? Are there some dishonest reporters? Hopefully not many, but there are some who are not as honest as
there are bad cops.
There are bad cops.
There's
There are
all
everything.
kinds of these
And there are cops who have falsified affidavits to get search warrants. I mean, that's been going on.
Fishman.
There's a story in Recorder's Court where one of the narcotics cops was testifying on the stand, and then when he was coming out, there were other cops out in the hallway, and so he said, "I wrote it in the van." He's telling them what to say, that he typed up some affidavit in a van while they were driving over to the judge to get it signed.
Right.
So are there there's plenty of that, and I'm sure you've.
It is. It's the story came out this week.
The narcotics unit.
The narcotics unit. But let's say this. As much as I'm a defense attorney and I go after these officers, and I go after them from a procedural standpoint. Then the procedure is lying in an affidavit and not following the procedure, such to the point that it offends the system under which it tries to impale people from a incarceration perspective, trying to lock somebody up, basically. Mm-hmm. So if it's so, if the process was not followed to the extent that that person's rights are violated, you shouldn't be allowed to prosecute them. You shouldn't allow them to be allowed. So a lot of the things, the shortcuts you're talking about in the FISA court and things like that, are they things that are perfunctory? And I don't mean to minimize it, because you do want to have some rightness to it, and you do want to follow procedure, but you not filling out or checking this box, did it affect the entire process?
Well, that was, I think Fishman gave us a little short course a few weeks ago on affidavit procedure, and he was talking about how one bad contention in an affidavit doesn't sour the whole thing. You just throw that out and you say, does that still...
They'll exclude that and redact that and see if there's still enough left in there.
Yeah.
But my argument is you got to also look at the intent of that person who put it in there, and does that affect their credibility as it relates to every other thing that they swore to?
Right.
So now that's an issue that a judge will have to decide. But at the end of the day, I was going to say most cops are honest. Yeah. Most, I think, I do believe that. I believe most of them get into the business of policing because sometimes it's that childhood dream. I want to be a police officer, and they live up to it. And something happens along the way. But, one or two bad ones makes the process. It's like lawyers.
Right.
One or two bad lawyers make us all look bad.
There aren't any bad
I
lawyers
know a lot of.
There are not. You know what I'm saying? We're going to be a Trumpian in this.
For many, many decades, I've known a lot of FBI agents, a lot of other federal agents, and a lot of them are great and painfully honest human beings. I was going to say, in 1988, when you talk about substance, a judge has to take into account sometimes the substance of the affidavit and whether it would have changed anything. I was covering in 1988, it was my first day on the beat in federal court. There was a hitman named Chester Campbell. They were going to revoke his parole because he had a gun in his glove compartment. So felon in possession of a gun. Well, it happened the FBI agent got who did the case had a tip from a source. He wanted to protect the source because Chester Campbell was probably going to kill him. And so he added a second, instead of saying confidential informant 1 told me, he said confidential informant told confidential informant 2, and confidential informant told me. So he tried to hide a little bit. He made up confidential informant number 2. The judge found out about it. It was Judge Woods, and he had a hissy fit and said, I'm thinking about throwing out this whole case because of that. He came back and finally ruled, and he said, look, the agent was wrong to do that, but the substance of the affidavit did not change, and the material facts were still the facts, and he let the case stand. And so I think, and the same thing with the FISA thing here, is basically they said there were some irregularities there. There were some things that weren't followed exactly to the T, but the investigation was still legitimate.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
All right. Well, we've got to wrap it up because we're running out of time here. We're over time. But I wanted to do this one last story because it's always fun to do something decent, and especially when we're getting close to the holidays. Everybody's favorite dessert, of course, is fruitcake, right?
Of course.
That's everybody's favorite.
Everybody loves fruitcake.
You're talking about that old cake?
This family down in Tecumseh, still has in their possession a fruitcake that was first baked by their great-great-great-grandmother, I think in 1870, what is it, 1870 something? Yeah, 1878.
Wow.
They still have it. So that is 130-something years old.
No, it's 140
141 years old.
Yeah,
141-year-old thing that they carry around every Christmas, bring back and forth.
I've eaten some that tasted like they were about that old.
Well,
I've also eaten some pretty good fruitcakes, and I am not a fruitcake fan. So there you go.
I don't mind fruitcake. It's just it gets a bad rap. It's just like chunks of candy inside a weird cake. It's not that bad.
It's an odd.
But this is funny though because it's
concoction.
It's not really a cake anymore. It's a rock,
yes,
right? I mean, I think he said you could see one piece of fruit that's kind of petrified in there, and I think it's a date. And he said that might be a clove, and that's it. But they just kind of schlep it around.
It's
kind of like
pretty gross looking.
It is pretty gross, but I think it's kind of charming.
141-year-old piece of fruitcake. So
yeah.
there you go.
There you go.
All right, and with that, we have to end the week that was. There's a lot of stuff we don't get to in this because we get sidetracked, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But I appreciate everybody watching. Thanks to our sponsors, TechTown and Samaritas. We appreciate their support very much. Thanks to all of you who have already started your membership here at Deadline Detroit. We appreciate it. If you want more information, go to deadlinedetroit.com. It's simple to do, and you'll be supporting the good work that everybody else besides me does around here. So I certainly appreciate it. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering our broadcast. Thanks to my son Alex, who is here today, who helped us set up. We appreciate that very much as well. Have a great weekend, everybody. Holiday parties in full swing all over town.
Which makes Alan's sign-off even more poignant
Yes.
this month.
Drive home safely.
There you go.
Yes.
Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization doing great stuff all around the state.